Sometimes, everything seems out of control, doesn't it? Plans fall apart, doors close, and the heart feels restless. But do you know what that means? God is at work. When He starts transforming our lives, we often don't notice it at first, but the signs are there. In this video, we'll talk about 9 clear signs that the Lord is changing your life for the better. If you feel that bad things are happening, pay attention, because what God is doing might be greater than you imagine. The first sign is when you're feeling restless. You know that feeling when suddenly nothing seems to fit? That discomfort deep in your soul, an unease that makes you question the direction of your life? This, my friend, could be God acting powerfully. Sometimes this discomfort arises when God is preparing us for something greater. And guess what? This is quite common. The world tells you to settle for less, but when God is in control, He doesn't let us remain complacent with the small. It's as if He's nudging you, saying, "Hey, there's more for you. You've been called to something greater." Have you ever felt that? A growing urge to break free from the mundane, to seek something new, even without knowing what it is? This is one of the first signs that God is moving the pieces on the board of your life. It's not easy, right? Sometimes this feeling can seem uncomfortable, even distressing, but trust, it's a sign of divine change. I've been through such moments myself, when it seemed like everything I did no longer made sense. It was as if God was calling me to a new phase, and I couldn't ignore that call. Maybe you're experiencing this right now. If so, pay attention. This discomfort could be God calling you to something much bigger. But what comes after this sign? How might God be shaping your life through these challenges and the doors that seem to be closing? Let's talk about that now. The second sign is challenges and closed doors. Who hasn't faced unexpected challenges or encountered doors that simply shut in front of us? We plan, work hard, but suddenly, everything starts to go wrong. Doors close, and paths that once seemed so clear become blocked. But you know what's interesting? Often, this is a clear sign that God is working behind the scenes. When He closes a door, it's because He has something better prepared for us. I've experienced this many times. Maybe you have too. We try everything, and yet it seems like things just don't move forward. In those moments, it's common to ask, "Why, God? What am I doing wrong?" But in reality, these difficulties can be a test of our faith, a way for God to shape us, to prepare us for something greater. Sometimes what we see as a closed door is God protecting us from a situation that wouldn't be good for us, or directing us towards a much greater opportunity that we can't yet see. And it's precisely at this point that the opportunity arises to reflect. How can we adjust our expectations in the face of these challenges? What might God be trying to teach us through these trials? That's what we'll discuss in the next sign. Now let's move on to the third sign. Something very powerful happens when God begins to transform our lives. He changes our expectations. What once seemed like the ideal plan for us starts to lose its strength. Old dreams, goals we thought were essential, suddenly no longer make as much sense. And accepting this isn't easy, is it? We spend so much time planning and dreaming, but when God is in control, He invites us to look beyond what we can see. I've experienced this situation many times. How many times did I think I knew what was best for me, only for God to have other plans? And those plans always turned out to be better than I could have imagined. This might be happening to you right now. Perhaps God is telling you it's time to let go of old expectations and open your heart to new purposes. And that, my friend, requires faith. Here it's important to stop and reflect. What are we expecting from our lives? What truly matters? When God changes our expectations, He is preparing us for something greater, something aligned with His purpose. So, instead of resisting, it's time to embrace this change with courage and confidence. And speaking of confidence, in the next sign, we'll see how God sends the right connections at the right time to help us navigate this new path. Sign 4. God will send divine connections to help. One of the clearest signs that God is working in your life is when He starts sending the right people at the right time. Those connections that appear unexpectedly, but suddenly make perfect sense in your journey. Have you noticed this? Sometimes it could be a casual conversation, a longtime friend, or even someone you've just met. but they bring a word, advice, or practical help that changes everything. I firmly believe that these connections are not coincidences. God uses people to open doors and guide our lives. I remember times when I felt completely lost, and suddenly, someone would show up with exactly what I needed to hear, a helping hand or a partnership. And this happens to many Christians. It might be that right now, God is preparing someone to cross your path, to strengthen you, guide you, and help you achieve something you couldn't do alone. And the most amazing thing? Sometimes these connections are so subtle that we only realize later how essential they were. So, stay alert, because God uses these people in ways we often don't even imagine. In the next sign, we'll explore how, amid all this, God gives us something even more powerful: peace amidst uncertainties. You know that peace that doesn't make sense? Let's talk about that next. Feeling peace amidst uncertainty is one of the most profound signs that God is working in your life. It's when, despite the uncertainties and challenges, you experience a peace that simply doesn't make sense. Have you ever been through this? Everything around you seems chaotic. You don't have all the answers, but somehow you feel an inexplicable peace within. This peace doesn't come from us. It comes directly from God. It's as if He is saying, "I am in control. Trust me." And it's not easy, is it? Because our human tendency is to worry, to try and solve everything with our own strength. But God, in His infinite wisdom, gives us this peace to remind us that He is working behind the scenes, even when we can't see it. I have experienced this many times, in moments when, logically, I should have been completely desperate, but something inside me said, "Calm down. God is working." It's that peace that surpasses human understanding. The Bible tells us in Philippians 4:7 that the peace of God surpasses all understanding and will guard our hearts and minds. Perhaps you are going through a time of uncertainty right now. If this peace has started to emerge in your heart, even when everything seems uncertain, you can believe it. God is working something great. And speaking of great things, the next sign is exactly about that: the revelation of new opportunities that God might be bringing into your life. This is a clear sign that God is transforming your life for the better, is when suddenly new opportunities begin to arise. But I'm not talking about just any opportunity. I'm referring to those you never imagined, ones that appear unexpectedly, as if a door was opened directly by God. Has this ever happened to you? Situations that seemed blocked suddenly start to unlock, and you begin to see possibilities you never thought of before. This is often God guiding you towards something greater. And you know what's interesting? Sometimes these opportunities are not exactly what we expected. God has an amazing way of surprising us with paths different from what we planned. I've seen this happen many times. When I was fixated on one direction, He would show me something completely new, and in the end, it was infinitely better than I could have imagined. God always sees what we cannot. Now, these opportunities require faith, don't they? It's necessary to be attentive and have the courage to embrace these changes God places before us. And sometimes, it can be challenging because change can be frightening. But remember, if God is revealing a new opportunity, it's because He has already prepared the way. And if you feel new doors opening, you can be sure that God is ahead of it. Next, we'll talk about how He restores our lives through these changes in the upcoming sign. When we talk about divine restoration, we're referring to something much greater than simply fixing what's broken. God doesn't just fix what's out of place. He transforms and turns what seemed lost into something even more beautiful and strong. Have you ever gone through times when you thought certain areas of your life were completely destroyed? It could have been a relationship, a job, or even your emotional and spiritual health. When God decides to restore, He brings it back with a greater purpose. What was once a point of pain becomes an area of victory. Have you ever felt that something was so out of your control that it seemed beyond repair? But then suddenly a door opened, something changed, and you realized you were being guided by God all along. That's how He works. He doesn't just heal us. He shows us that each broken piece has a purpose in the grand work He is doing. I remember a specific moment in my life when I felt this way. Everything seemed to be falling apart, But when I surrendered completely into God's hands, He restored in a way I could never have imagined. And it wasn't just a superficial restoration. It was something deep, transforming my life completely. What about you? Have you experienced this? Have you felt that God was taking something that seemed impossible to restore and transforming it into something far greater than you expected? Often, in the midst of pain, we can't see the work being done, but when we look back, we realize that God was, all along, preparing something grand. This is the essence of divine restoration. God doesn't just return what was lost. He multiplies. He brings it back stronger, so that we can glorify His name. If you're seeking that restoration in your life, know that God is an expert at turning chaos into beauty. He is working on something right now, even if you can't see it yet. Trust. The next sign is the strengthened faith. One of the clearest signs that God is transforming your life is when your faith, even amid storms, is strengthened. Often, God allows us to go through difficulties precisely so our trust in Him grows. Perhaps you've faced moments of great trial, times when everything seemed lost, but instead of giving up, you felt your faith being refined like gold in the fire. That sense that, despite the circumstances, you are more connected to God than ever is one of the greatest gifts He can give us. Have you ever found yourself reflecting on how your faith has evolved over time? Perhaps, some time ago, you would have been shaken by any challenge, but now you find strength in God in a way you didn't before. This is faith being strengthened. I remember specific moments in my journey when I thought I wouldn't make it. The trials seemed too great, but instead of distancing myself from God, those moments drew me closer to Him. My faith emerged from those situations stronger, and I saw how God was using each challenge to shape me and prepare me for something greater. What about you? How has your faith been tested? It's important to remember that often, during the toughest times, that's exactly when our faith is refined. God doesn't let us face anything without purpose. Each trial, each difficulty, is an opportunity for growth. If you're going through this now, know that God is strengthening you. Every moment of pain is serving to bring you closer to Him and to prepare you for greater things. Think of it this way: faith is like a muscle. The more it is tested, the stronger it becomes. If you feel that your faith is being challenged right now, know that God is preparing you for victories you can't yet imagine. Trust, persevere, because when we come out on the other side of these trials, our faith shines brighter, and we are able to witness God's transformative power in our lives. If your faith has been challenged lately, know that this is part of God's process to strengthen you. Sometimes it's in the greatest trials that our trust in Him grows the most. But if you feel you need more clarity, more direction, and wish to see this transformation in a practical and powerful way, I recommend the 7-Day Healing Miracle. This guide was designed to help you strengthen your faith and experience the restoration God wants to bring into your life. The link is in the pinned comment, and this could be the opportunity you've been waiting for to experience this change. The next sign is growing willingness to obey God. This sign is incredibly powerful. God is changing your life when you begin to feel an increasing desire to obey His plans and align your life with His divine will. It's as if something shifts inside you. What once seemed difficult now becomes a natural choice. The things that used to attract or distract you no longer make sense. At this moment, you realize God is transforming your heart. He places within us this willingness to walk according to His purposes. Have you ever felt this change? Perhaps things you used to do and thought were normal now no longer align with what you feel in your heart. Or maybe you've started to hear that gentle yet firm voice calling you to do the right thing, even when it's not the easiest path. This is God working in you. I remember a time when I resisted obeying certain aspects of what God was asking of me. But as I grew spiritually, I began to see that obeying God brings a peace and joy that the world cannot offer. What about you? Are you feeling this desire growing? You might be at this very point right now. When we start to feel this deeper willingness to obey God, it means He is preparing us for something great. This is a change that doesn't come from ourselves. It's the work of the Holy Spirit, shaping our character and leading us to His purpose for our lives. If you feel you're in this process, know that God is calling you to something greater, something you might not yet imagine, but that will be part of a perfect plan. And if you're on this journey and wish to deepen your walk with God, this is the moment to say yes to His will. Because when you are willing to obey, doors start to open in ways that can only be explained by God's moving. So, what's holding you back from taking that step of faith today? So, now that we've explored these 9 signs, how have you been perceiving the changes God is making in your life? Perhaps you've already noticed some of these signs, or maybe you're just realizing that He's working in ways you hadn't identified before. Remember, every closed door, every challenge, every feeling of restlessness could be God moving you to the right place, preparing you for something much greater than you imagine. Divine change often starts subtly, but if you keep trusting, you'll see that He has a perfect plan for you. I've been through times when I couldn't see what God was doing, but eventually, everything made sense. And if you're also feeling that your faith is being strengthened, or that your desire to obey God has grown in your heart, stay steadfast. God is working powerfully in your life, even when circumstances seem uncertain. If you want to take a deeper step in this journey of healing and transformation, I recommend the 7-Day Miracle of Healing. This guide might be just what you need to better discern God's signs and experience real change. The link is in the first pinned comment. Remember to subscribe, like, and activate notifications for the channel. If you've made it this far, type, "God is going to change my life," so I know you watched until the end. May God bless you, and remember, He has something amazing in store for you.